Tell me a little bit about your teaching philosophy. What do you think was your strength as a teacher?
I think it helped that I had, when I was in the Marine Corps, they had something called leadership school. And I went to it for 3 weeks when I was corporal. And because I was stationed at Parris Island, I worked on the base newspaper, or handled public information the whole time I was in the Marine Corps, including traveling with basketball and football and baseball teams. And then we had so few people that when I was a sergeant, within months before I got out, I went back to leadership school again. I spent 6 weeks in leadership school, 2 different times. And I think that experience and being in the Marine Corps were the best things that happened to me. I learned how to handle myself. And then Ralph Lynn taught me everything else. He gave me great advice. We used to go have coffee almost every morning. And I once had a student that was acting bad. And I mentioned it to Ralph, and he gave me one of the best pieces of advice I ever had as a teacher. He said, remember, it's not you, it's them. And that piece of information alone has helped me, because every time a problem would come up from then on, I'd remember, I'm not the person that's causing this problem. The problem is they're having the problem already, and learning how to deal with that. And I think another thing is I treated people as equals. I tried not to ever act authoritarian toward them. I may have done it some early in my career, but just be natural, just act yourself, and not put on airs, not try to be somebody you weren't. You know, I was a boy that was raised on a mill village in the Carolinas, and being in a college classroom was a big deal for me, you know.
Did your teaching style change over the years?
You're more comfortable as time passes than say in the beginning. In the beginning, you're just learning how to do it, and so you do things that later you decide, well, I wouldn't do that again, and I can't. That wouldn't be. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. And I think I became, as time went by, I became more relaxed and than I had been to start with. And in being more relaxed, a lot of times you can communicate better than if you are pontificating. If you're, instead of, you know, we have 3 points to cover here, and there are points A, B, and C. Instead, just say, here's what I think about this, or whatever. And I think that if you can pull it off, that can be very helpful. I may have learned that from Ralph, too, by the way.
Tell me a little bit how you might start on the first day of class. I've heard a story about how you got everybody's attention in one of the classes that you, early classes that you taught.
Well, I wouldn't say that I did that all the time, but especially in reporting, I would do some things. I had a good friend that lived in Waco at the time, named Bill Ham. He later became famous. He put together more than one rock band, including ZZ Top, and was the long time manager of ZZ Top. And we were friends, and I had Bill come in and interrupt the class one day and say, I've got the battery you ordered. And I said, I didn't order any battery. And he said, well, if you don't pay for the battery, you got to pay $30 for this battery. If you don't pay for the battery, we're going to have to. And so I pulled out $30 and gave it to him and got the battery. And then asked people to write what they would see. And then you probably heard from Bob Darden the story about these two guys came in, just walked in and started fighting. And one got on top of the other fighting on the floor. Our people come in and interrupt and just say, start talking to me. Then I would ask students to write what they'd seen, and usually what happened, they couldn't remember the details, and I'd try to prove the point, about how you, first of all, how you pay attention, and how inexact people's memories are, impressions are on things like that. But I wouldn't say that I did that, I did it mostly in reporting classes to try to teach them something.
How did you inspire and influence future journalists?
I think it'd be a mistake to think that you do it yourself. I don't think you do it so much yourself as it pretty well has to be. It has to be there to start with. I was real lucky, I would say, especially at Baylor. I was real lucky. These were the sons and daughters of the Depression and of World War II, and so these were the generation that were going off to college after their parents had lived through the Depression, after the fathers had been in service in World War II and so forth. And the great thing about the 13 years I was at Baylor is that you've had people who were already motivated. You didn't have to do a whole lot to motivate them. They were already motivated. They came that way from all over Texas, in different backgrounds, because they had seen what had happened to their parents and their grandparents, and they were going to do something. They were going to accomplish something, and so it was just not hard to do.
How'd that change as you went to SMU and then the University of Houston?
It changed over time because then you got students who were. I've had students who are the sons and daughters of the students I taught. Think about this. So they didn't have the same background, but there's not a whole lot of difference. I would say there's not a great difference in students. It's just that times have changed and the culture changes, and so they are different in that sense. A great thing about the University of Houston is the great diversity there. It's one of the most diverse schools in the country, and I was there for 14 years, and lots and lots and lots. Most of the students, their parents didn't go to college. Many of them are immigrants from Vietnam, Mexico, all over the world, and so that's very, very different from the way I started out. Of course, at Baylor with people from Amarillo and Lubbock and Abilene and places in between. You see.